नमस्कार दोस्तों, मैं हूं सचिन और आपका मेरे YouTube चैनल पे बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। दोस्तों, आज हम इंग्लिश लिटरेचर की एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट एज को डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं, जिस एज का नाम है द रोमांटिक एज, जिसकी शुरुआत होती है 1798 में लिरिकल वैलेट्स की पब्लिकेशन के साथ, जिसे विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ ने लिखा था, और इसकी एंडिंग होती है 1815 में विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ की डेथ के साथ। हालांकि कुछ बुक्स में इसकी जो एंडिंग है वो 1837 में कंसिडर करी गई है, लेकिन दैट इज़ ऑल्सो काइंड ऑफ डिबेटेबल। ठीक है, तो चलिए, ये थी थोड़ी सी इंट्रोडक्शन इस एज के बारे में। अब हम बात करते हैं इस एज की कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट्स की। सो दिस एज ब्रिंग्स द डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस in 1776. English Reform Bill was passed in 1832 and the French Revolution 1789. So that's why it is also called the Age of Revolution. It is also known as the second creative period of our English literature, the first being the Age of Elizabeth. Coleridge and Southey formed their youthful scheme of apprenticeocracy on the banks of Susquehanna, an ideal commonwealth in which the principles of Morse utopia should be put into practice. Even Wordsworth, fired with political enthusiasm, could write, "Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven." तो वर्ड्सवर्थ का मानना था कि उस टाइम पे जीना, जिंदा रहना तो मतलब एक ब्लिस की तरह था। ठीक है, और उसी टाइम पे यंग होना मतलब आप ऐसे मानो कि आप स्वर्ग में जी रहे हो। ठीक है, तो ये कुछ वर्ड्स थे विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ के इस एज को लेके, रोमांटिक एज को लेके। कोलरिज, साउथी एंड वर्ड्सवर्थ formed the trio called Lake Poets. There are women novelists which features in this age also. For the first time, women novelist, a number of women novelists comes in front and write a number of novels. So that is also, this age is also known for women novelists such as Jane Austen, Fanny Burney, Maria Edgeworth. Okay, such kind of women novelist. This age also brings literary magazines such as Edinburgh Review 1817, the Quarterly Review 1808, Blackwood's Magazine 1817, the Westminster Review 1824, the Spectator 1828, the Athenaeum 1828, and Fraser's Magazine 1830. Walter Peter called this age the addition of strangeness, while Ward Stanton called it Renaissance of wonder. Dr. Radhakrishnan said romantic literature is the outcome from the depth of the depleted human heart. This age is also known as liberalism in literature. The German romantic movement primarily inspired the romantic age in England. The movement was Sturm and Drang movement. So this movement was also related to the famous painting by German painter Caspar David named Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. Friedrich Schlegel and Friedrich Schiller were the first to inspire Romanticism, and they were German writers. Now we will consider some social conditions of romantic age. First of all, we have is industrial revolution. So it was the time of industrial revolution before Victorian. The first industrial revolution came in a romantic age around 1780s to 1790s. The first industries were already set in England. It resulted in unemployment and problems of labor class that emerged, and people started running back to the villages. In romantics, they started running back to nature, to villages, to countries. The next is new reforms. A lot of reforms were already taking. The rise of railway engines around 1780s to 1790s. They started experimenting with initial use of the motorbikes. So the conditions were much better, though it was not in the favor of labor class, but it was in the favor of many other things, like the better conditions of the upper class people actually. And the third is the influence of the French Revolution. So in the beginning of French Revolution in 1789, the common message and literary persona simply influenced with the ideals of liberty, fraternity, equality, and it became the motto of each and everyone. Fourth one is the age of peace and spirituality. So this age is also known as the age of peace and spirituality. The thinkers started relating nature as God, father figure, and they started taking messages from nature only. Wordsworth, Shelley, Coleridge, all these writers, they were heavily inspired by the influence of French Revolution. John Keats, the best romantic writer, is the only exception who was not inspired by French Revolution related to romantic age. He has no relation with French Revolution. This was the reason that Shelley criticized him, saying that Keats' poetry has no revolutionary spirit. Now we will consider some literary characteristics of romantic age. So the first one is romantic poetry is subjective in its content. All the poets of this era expressed their ideas, whether they are related to mankind, nature, universe, or their own personal life. So, the poetry of Romantic Age is subjective in its content. Second one is poetry is divided into 5 parts, that is subjective, objective, descriptive, narrative, and confessional. When a poet talks about his personal life, it becomes subjective poetry. When a poet talks about someone else's, a friend, or to evening or even Grecian urn, so it becomes objective poetry. When a poet gives you strong narratives like kind of story, so it becomes narrative poetry. When a poet celebrates description, gives you unnecessary details of beautiful objects, it becomes descriptive poetry. When a poet talks about something very personal or dark secret related to his personal life, it becomes confessional poetry. Now, the third characteristics is romantic poets are divided into 2 generations, that is, first and second. So, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey all are first generation writer. Wordsworth born in 1770, Coleridge 1772, Southey born in 1774. John Keats, Shelley, and Byron are all second generation writers. Byron was born in 1788, John Keats was born in 1795, and Shelley was born in 1792. Out of these 2 generations, second generation is highly subjective and more romantic, while first generation is more philosophical. Fourth one is romantic poetry has spontaneous influence and expression. As William Wordsworth has remarked, poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility. Fifth one is supernatural elements. So romantics believes in the existence of God, nature as a powerful figure, and paganism also known as pantheism, which means when you find essence of God in nature or natural objects. Sixth one is love for nature. All these writers have celebrated their love for nature. For Wordsworth, nature is a father figure. For Coleridge, nature is mysterious beauty. For Keats, nature is beloved. For Shelley, nature is a powerful revolutionary thing. For Byron, it is the same revolutionary thing. For Southey, nature has mysteries, myths, and a great connection with human life. 7 is melancholy. So the most important part of romanticism, chronologically ordered as imagination, melancholy, and escape. 8th one is emphasis on the nobility and goodness of the human heart. Nature or romantic poetry talks about the great human nature and heart, love, emotion, passion, sympathy, and empathy. So these were the things that the romantic poetry focuses on. 9th one is romanticism also revolted against the artificial standard of writing of neoclassical. Wordsworth said there is no essential difference between the language of poetry and language of prose. Number 10 is reintroduced Spenserian stanza. So the romantic writers, they reintroduced Spenserian stanza. They had their own new invented style. Some of them has used free verse, and mostly the maximum writing in romanticism is in blank verse. They had introduced lyrics, ballads, sonnets, songs, odes, etc. Now we will discuss romantic poets, and the romantic poets always starts with William Wordsworth, who was born in 1770 and who died in 1850. He was the father of romanticism. He was born in Cockermouth, also known as the Sage of Cockermouth. This was the Lake District. He had taken care of a young friend, Riley Calvert, who died of consumption, and left Wordsworth here to a few £100 and to the request that he should give his life to poetry. He was born in Cockermouth, also known as the Sage of Cockermouth, the Lake District. In 1842, Wordsworth was given the royal pension of £100. In 1843, he became England's poet laureate after the death of former poet laureate Robert Southey. 1843, Robert Browning criticized him with the following lines in the poem, Our Lost Leader. For a ribbon to stick his coat, for a handful of silver, he left us, our lost leader. Now we will discuss some of minor works of Wordsworth. First one we have is Descriptive Sketches, 1793, Evening Walk, 1793, The Borderers, a poetic play tragedy between 1795 to 1797, Guilt and Sorrow, Michael, Simon Lee, The Old Huntsman, Laodamia, 1715, To the Cuckoo, Idiot Boy, The Recluse, The Excursion, The Dudon Sonnets 1820, To a Skylark 1825, Yarrow Revisited 1831, To a Highland Girl, Stepping Westward, The Rainbow, Ode to Duty. So these are the minor works of Wordsworth. You need not go through these works, as only the titles are enough, if you could remember that. Now we will discuss some of the major works by Wordsworth. So the most important work that Wordsworth has written in his life, that is Lyrical Ballads. It is also known as the Magna Carta of Romanticism. It was written in collaboration with S.T. Coleridge. In this, there are a collection of 23 poems. 19 have been written by Wordsworth, while 4 have been written by S.T. Coleridge. The first poem of the collection was Rime of Ancient Mariner, while the last was Tintin Abbey. While Wordsworth wrote this work, the critics started attacking this work, saying that this has violated the neoclassical structure and the book has no standard writing. Wordsworth wrote a preface to justify his writing standards, that is known as Preface to Lyrical Ballads, and it was published in 1800. This has been asked in UGC NET exam, so you should note it down. Next we have is Solitary Reaper. You need to read the summary of this book and you need to read the whole work. The Lyrical Ballads, you need to read the whole work. Lyrical Ballads, all the poems are very important. So you need to go through the detailed summary of Lyrical Ballads of all the poems that are contained in it, and you need to read the summary of Solitary Reaper. The opening line of this poem is, Behold her, single in the field, yon solitary highland lass. The last lines of this poem are, I listened motionless and still, and as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. Next poem we have is My Heart Leaps Up, or The Rainbow. You need to read the summary of this poem. It is very important. The poem's opening line is, My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. One more important line of the poem is, The child is the father of the man. Next we have is, The word is too much with us. You need to read the summary of this work also. We have an important line over here. Great God, I would rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. Here he finds two ocean gods, Triton and Proteus. In this work, he has used a philosophy called pantheism. In the poem's last line, he talks about the ocean gods have sight of Proteus from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wretched horn. Next work we have is It is a Beauteous Evening, Calm and Free, published in 1802. It is the opening line. It is a beauteous evening, calm and free, and it is a sonnet. Ode on the Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood, published in 1807. Here Wordsworth sums up his philosophy of childhood, and he may possibly be indebted here to the poet Vaughan, who more than a century before had proclaimed in The Retreat the same doctrine. Next we have is The Prelude, or The Growth of a Poet's Mind, published in 1850. The book 9th and 10th of this particular collection are fully influenced by the French Revolution, and books 11th and 12th discuss frustration of the French Revolution. The Prelude is in the 12th book, published by his wife. It was published after his death. Next one we have is Composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3, 1802. You can read the summary, brief summary of this poem. Next we have is London, 1802. You can read the summary of this poem as well. Daffodils, you must read the summary, detailed summary of this work. The last and important lines of this poem are, far oft when on my couch I lie, they flash upon that inward eye, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Next we have is the Lucy poems, published in 1798. The 5 poems in this collection have been written by between 1798 and 1801. One is 3 years she grew in sun and shower, also known as She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways. It also includes Wagner, whom Charles Lamb praised as it was dedicated to him. Next important writer we have is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who was born in 1772 and died in 1834. So he was heavily influenced and inspired by German philosophy. He was inspired by Immanuel Kant, Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, and Friedrich Schiller. He also thought of creating a Pentecostal society near the river Susquehanna. Here, he came in contact with Robert Southey. With him, he started working on a utopian society. Utopia means kingdom of nowhere, a beautiful and that just society belongs to imagination only. So they made a plan with 5 more families of making a pentistocracy society in Utopia with 7 families. They bought some land near the river Susquehanna and they tried to establish a society based on utopian ideals. But this idea resulted in failure. College style is called conversational poetry, where you recite poetry in a way that you are talking to someone. Okay, so he is also the pioneer of the willing suspension of disbelief. Wordsworth says of him that though other men of the age had done some wonderful things, Coleridge was the only wonderful man he had ever known. Charles Lamb humorously describes him as an archangel, a little damaged. Now, we will discuss some of his works. First of all, we have his Kubla Khan, which was published in 1798. He called it a kind of reverie. The whole poem came to Coleridge one morning when he had fallen asleep over Purchas, and upon awakening, he began to write hastily. After 54 lines were written, he was interrupted and he could never finish the poem. Coleridge, it talks about a king in Zandu. It is a dream vision. Coleridge was under the influence of opium and was reading the book Pilgrimage by Samuel Purchas. He slept while reading it and saw a dream about a great majestic king Kubla Khan, who, when wake up in the morning, he started writing. When he was about to finish his poetry, he was disturbed by a visitor. That person came from Parlock, and his name was Thomas. After meeting him, when Coleridge tried to rewrite it, he forgot everything. This is the reason Kubla Khan is incomplete. Here he talks about a lady who has been trapped and she is waiting for her demon lover. It is the best example of imagination and it has also oriental references. And you need to read the whole poem as well as the detailed summary of this work. Next we have is France an Ode, which was published in 1798. After that we have the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. You need to read the summary and as well as the poem. The opening scene is set in a wedding party. The hero is having a dead flying bird hanging in his neck. The bird is called albatross. Here we have beautiful lines that talk about the condition of the sailors at that time. Water, water everywhere, and all the boats did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. God forgives them with a message when they repent their action. He prayeth well who loveth well. So this is also an important line in this poem. We need to give a separate video for this particular poem and a lot of the other poems also. Here I am discussing in deep about all the things. Next, he has written lectures on Shakespeare, which was published in 1849. After that, we have Love. It is a ballad written for the poet's wife, Sarah Hutchinson. It inspired John Keats to write La Velle Dame Sans Mercy. Next, he has written Biographia Literaria, or Sketches of My Literary Life and Opinions, which was published in 1817. It is an explanation and criticism of Wordsworth's theory of poetry. After that, he has written Christabel, published in 1797. You need to read the whole poem as well as the detailed summary of this particular poem. There is a palace in the poem which is guarded by a bitch. This bitch has been called Mastiff Witch. There are 7 signals which have been given there in the poem, including Mastiff Witch and her growling, Iron Gate, fire, reflection created by fire, denial of the prayer, talking to the dead mother, and the big black mark. This actually stands for his own concept, wailing suspension of disbelief. In this poem, Christabel is the heroine, while Geraldine is the daughter of Lord Roland de Vaux, who was once a friend of Sir Leoline before the two men quarreled. Next writer we have is P.B. Shelley, who was born in 1792 and died in 1822. Shelley was a member of a society called Visionary Poets, which included Lord Byron, Leigh Hunt, Thomas Love Peacock, rival of Shelley, Mary Shelley, Shelley's wife, and William Godwin. Byron wrote of him, the most gentle, the most amiable, and the least worldly minded person I ever met. Now we'll discuss some of his works. First of all, we'll discuss his short poems, that is, The Cloud, To a Skylark. You need to read the summary of the To a Skylark, or To the West Wind, again the summary of the same poem, Tonight. He has also written Ozymandias. You need to read the poem as well as the summary. The poem's opening line is, I met a traveller from an antique land. Next, he has written Alastor or the Spirit of Solitude, published in 1816. Here, Shelley wanders restlessly through the vast silences of nature in search of a dream maiden who shall satisfy his love of beauty. It is his confession not simply of failure but of undying hope. Next, he has written Prometheus Unbound, 1818 to 1820. It is a lyrical drama and it is the best work of Shelley's revolutionary enthusiasm. Next, we will discuss some of his revolutionary works such as Queen Mab 1813, The Revolt of Aslam 1818, Hellas 1821, and The Witch of Atlas 1820. He has also written Cain. It is the story of the first ever murder committed by humans. Next, he has written Mask of Anarchy. It is the first example of non-violent resistance. Next, he has written The Cinci, or a drama in 5 acts, 1819. It is founded on a morbid Italian story. The heroine Beatrice is driven to desperation by the monstrous wickedness of her father, and she kills him and suffers the death penalty as a consequence. Next, he has written Adonius, which was published in 1821. It is a wonderful threnody, or a song of grief over the death of the poet John Keats. There are certain lines dealing with Thomas Chatterton also. Next, he has written Defense of Poetry. It is a reply to an attack by Thomas Love Peacock's 4 Ages of Poetry. Shelley remarks that the Romantic Age was the golden age because the writers were free. Next, we will discuss John Keats, who was born in 1795 and died in 1821. He was fascinated with Grecian themes, imageries, culture, and everything. This love of Grecian has been called Hellenism. Shelley once said Keats was a Greek. Matthew Arnold says Keats had flint and iron in him. Lovell pointed out that virtue went out of him in everything he wrote. He is often compared with the marvelous boy Chatterton, whom he greatly admired and whose memory he dedicated his And Me on. He belonged to what was derisively called the Cockney School of Poetry, of which Leigh Hunt was chief, and Proctor and Beddoes were fellow workmen. Now we will discuss some of his works. First of all, we will discuss Endymion. You need to read the detailed summary of this poem. It is the story of a young shepherd beloved by a moon goddess. The poem begins with the striking lines. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. Next, he has written Ode to Grecian Urn. You need to read the summary of this work also. He says, heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. The poem's opening line is, thou still unravished ride of quietness. And the poem's last lines are, beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. Next, he has written to Autumn. Again, you need to read the summary of this poem. Here we have the lines, where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. Next, he has written Ode to a Nightingale. Look, you need to read the whole poem as well as the detailed summary of this poem. The opening line is, my heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains. Further, he says, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre, thin and dies, where what to think is to be full of sorrow, and laden eye despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. He also talks about wine. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long ago in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, that I might drink and leave the word unseen. Next, he has written to Psyche. Again, you need to read the summary of this poem, and you can read the poem also. Next, he has written on first looking into Chapman's Homer. The opening line is, much have I travelled in the realms of cold. Next, he has written Hyperion, 1818. Its theme is the overthrow of the Titans by the young sun god Apollo. Shelley, struck by the beauty and promise of Hyperion, sent a generous invitation to the author to come to Pisa and live with him. Still, Keats refused, sympathizing with Shelley's revolt against society. And next, he has written Isabella, subtitle is Port of Basil. And then he has written Lamia, published 1820. It is the story of a beautiful enchantress who turns from a serpent into a glorious woman and fills every human sense with delight until, as a result of the foolish philosophy of old Apollonius, she vanishes forever from her lover's sight. Next, he has written The Eve of Saint Agnes, published 1820, and then he has written Ode to Melancholy. The opening line is, "No, no, go not to Lethe, neither twist wolf's vein, tight-rooted for its poisonous wine." Now we will discuss about Robert Southey, who was born in 1774 and died in 1843. He was the Poet Laureate of England from 1813 to 1843. He is also known as the Lake Poet or the Lakers by the Scottish magazine reviewers. He is known to mixes mythology with romanticism. Now we will discuss some of his works. First of all, we have is Thalaba the Destroyer. It is an Oriental verse romance, a tale of Arabian enchantment. The opening line of this poem is, "How beautiful is night, a dew freshness fills the silent air." Next, he has written The Curse of Kehama. It is a melody of Hindu mythology. And then he has written Madoc. It is a legend of a Welsh prince who discovered the Western world. Fourth one we have is Roderick. It is a tale of the last of the Goths. Next, he has written The Vision of Judgment, The Scholar, Old Clouds, The Well of Saint Keen, The Inchcape Rock, Lodore, Joan of Arc. It is an epic. So these are some of his works. Next, we will discuss George Gordon, also known as or famously known as Lord Byron, who was born in 1788 and died in 1824. Mad, bad, and dangerous to know was a phrase used by Lady Caroline Lamb to describe Lord Byron. Scott describes him as a man of real goodness of heart and the kindest and best feelings, miserably thrown away by his foolish contempt of public opinion. His two favorite books were the Old Testament and a volume of Pope's poetry. Of the latter, he says, "His is the greatest name in poetry. All the rest are barbarians." He says, "I awoke one morning to find myself famous, and presently he styles himself the grand Napoleon of the realm of rhyme." Even Goethe was deceived and declared that a man so wonderful in character had never appeared in literature and would never appear again. His house was ever the meeting place for revolutionists and malcontents calling themselves patriots, whom he trusted too greatly and with whom he shared his money most generously. Curiously enough, while he trusted men too quickly, he had no faith in human society or government and wrote in 1817, "I have simplified my politics to an utter detestation of all existing governments." Now we will discuss some of his works. First one we have is Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Here we have a famous canto, "There is a pleasure in pathless wood." Here we have a beautiful line, "I do not love men the less, but nature more." Next, he has written The Prisoner of Chillon, and then he has written Don Juan, Prophecy of Dante, Cain, it is a parody of Paradise Lost. Next, he has written Manfred, it is a parody of Faust, and then he has written Hours of Idleness, published 1807. This work was criticized by the Edinburgh Review. Byron took revenge by criticizing them in his next book, that is English Bards and Scottish Reviewers. So this is all about Lord Byron. Now we will discuss romantic essayist, and first one and most important we have is Charles Lamb, who was born in 1775 and died in 1834. The father of essays is Montaigne, who is a French writer, and his famous collection of essays was Aesias. It was published in 1581. The father of English essays is Francis Bacon, and the prince of English essays is Charles Lamb. In 1796, Lamb's sister Mary, who was as talented and remarkable as Lamb himself, went violently insane and killed her mother. For a very long time after this tragedy, she was in an asylum at Hoxton. Then Lamb, in 1797, brought her to his own little house and for the remainder of his life cared for her. He has also written about the bad conduct of Mary's with his mother. He said, "When I came down, I was at stairs. I found my mother in the pool of blood and Mary was constantly stabbing her. It happened because a neighboring girl comes to play in their house and she misbehaved with Mary, and then Mary kicked her out of the house. Seeing that, Mary's mother started scolding her for the bad conduct, and then Mary got a fit of anger and then she killed her mother." So after that, Mary was imprisoned, and Charles Lamb got support of Coleridge, Leigh Hunt, and William Hazlitt. Finally, they proved in the court that Mary Lamb is mentally retarded. The verdict came, and it said that it is dangerous to keep Mary in the mental asylum. There should be someone to take care of her. And Lamb took this responsibility and brought her to his own little house. They started living together. Seeing this, Charles Lamb's beloved left him, and then most of his works are dealing with that life only, with his sister. Now we will discuss some of his works. First one, and important one we have, is Album versus Old Familiar Faces, which was published in 1798. It is a beautiful poem in this collection. Okay, so the title of the work is Album versus and Old Familiar Faces is a beautiful poem in this collection. Okay, Charles Lamb, in collaboration with his sister Mary Lamb, rewrote Shakespearean plays, so which is entitled as Tales from Shakespeare, published in 1807. The pseudonym of Mary Lamb here is Cousin Bridget. Charles Lamb would use the name Elia. It has 20 stories because we have 20 authenticated plays. There are 37 plays by Shakespeare, but 20 have Shakespeare's signature. Charles wrote the tragedies while Mary wrote comedies. Next, he converted Ulysses into children's stories. This is also in collaboration with Mary. Next, he has written John Woodville, published 1802, and then he has written Rosamund Grey, published 1798. Following are his essays. First one we have is Essays of Elia, 1823, and then Last Essays of Elia, 1833. So during these 10 years, he used to write a number of essays, which was published together in Essays of Elia in 1833. And then he has written A Bachelor's Complaint on the Behavior of Married People. Here he says children are the double-headed arrows. He also says in the same work that his friends are becoming more nice when they are married. So he doesn't like that actually. He wants them to behave normally, naturally. But he doesn't like that his friends behave more generous towards him after they get married. It also kind of shows his his sadness also that he cannot marry. Third one we have is Christ Hospital, and then he has written Dream Children, and final he has written All Fools Stay. Next essayist we have is William Hazlitt, who was born in 1778 and died in 1830. He is also called Critic's Critic. He worked for newspapers such as Morning Chronicle and Examiner. His epitaph is called Well, I Have Had a Very Happy Life. His works are a reply to the essay on population, 1807. Next, he has written Characters of Shakespeare's plays. He criticized Hamlet and Othello, but praised Macbeth and Rosalind. He doesn't consider King Lear a hero. Next, he has written Lectures on English Poets, A View on English Stage, Indian Jugglers, On Going to a Journey. This sum up our poet William Hazlitt, our essayist story William Hazlitt, and then we will discuss next essayist, that is Thomas De Quincey, born 1785, died 1859. At 15, he not only read Greek but spoke it fluently, and one of his astounded teachers remarked, "That boy could harangue an Athenian mob better than you, or I could address an English one." He was the chief contributor to Blackboard's magazine. He has been called the psychologist of style. He has written Literary Reminiscence. It contains appreciation of Wordsworth, Coleridge, Lamb, Shelley, Keats, Hazlitt, Landor, etc. He has also written a famous work, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, published 1821. In this autobiographical work, he addresses the reader directly. To the reader, to the competent reader, I hereby produce my life history. It takes you to the reader response theory, which merely asserts that a writer targets an implied reader and never gets the ideal reader. Next, he has written Murder Considered One of the Finest Art, published 1827, and then he has written On the Knocking at the Door in Macbeth, 1823. A quotation for this book is one of the most penetrating footnotes in our literature. Next, he has written Letters to a Young Man, published 1823, and then he has written Joan of Arc, 1847, The Revolt of the Tartars, 1840, The English Mail Coach, 1849, Dream Fugue, Autobiographical Sketches, 1853, Klosterheim, a novel, Logic of Political Economy, The Essays on Style and Rhetoric, Philosophy of Herodotus. Now we will discuss romantic novelist, And first one we have is Walter Scott, who was born in 1771 and died on 1832. He is also known as the father of historical novels. His works are Waverley, published 1814. It is his first novel. Waverley is a place that Walter used as the setting of his many other novels, including this one. That's why his novels are called Waverley novels. And then he has written The Antiquary, The Black Dwarf, published 1816, Old Mortality, 1816, Rob Roy, 1817, Ivanhoe, and the famous character in this particular novel is Robin Hood. And then he has written The Heart of Midlothian, The Bride of Lammermoor. Okay, you need to read the summary of this book, The Bride of Lammermoor. And then he has written Tales of a Grandfather. And then he has written Demonology and Witchcraft, biographies of Dryden and Swift, The Life of Napoleon in 9 volumes. And he has written some long poems also, that is The Lady of the Last Minstrel, published 1805, Marmion 1808, The Lady of the Lake 1810. And then he has written Maria Edgeworth, who was born in 1768 and died in 1849. She is known as the first writer of regional novels. Regional novels are those where we talk about some particular setting in imaginary settings. For example, Thomas Hardy Wessex, R.K. Narayan Malgudi, William Faulkner, Yokna Patwa, Margaret Lawrence Manawaka. Her wonderful pictures of Irish life suggested the idea of writing his Scottish romances to Walter Scott. Her works are Castle Recreant, and the second one is Practical Education. It is an educational treatise written in collaboration with her father, Richard Lovell Edgeworth. And next writer we have is Fanny Burney, who was born on 1752 and died on 1840. She is also known as Frances Burney and later as Madame d'Arblay. She is a member of Blue Stocking Group. She was very close to Samuel Johnson. He used to call her My Little Fanny. She wrote novels dealing with family issues, domestic and simple love stories, imaginary characters, etc. She is also known as the founder of the Tea Table School of Fiction. Her works are Evelina, or The History of a Young Lady's Entrance into the World, published 1778. Next, she has written Cecilia, published 1782. And then she has written The Wanderer, or Female Difficulties, published 1814. And finally, she has written Camilla, published 1796. The next writer, the novelist we have is Mary Shelley, who was born on 1797 and died on 1851. She has written Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, published 1818. You need to read the detailed summary of this work. It is the only work written by Mary Shelley. It is believed that it is the only work written by Mary Shelley. Critics believe it was written by P.B. Shelley, not by Mary Shelley. She has also written Matilda, 1819, Volperga, or The Life and Adventures of Castruccio, Prince of Lucca, 1823, The Last Man, 1826. You need to read the summary of this work. The Fortunes of Perkin Berwick, 1830. Next, she has written Lodore, 1835, and then she has written Faulkner, 1837. Next novelist we have is William Godwin, who was born on 1756 and died on 1836. He is the father-in-law of B.B. Shelley, father of Mary Shelley, and husband of Mary Wollstonecraft. His works are An Inquiry Concerning Political Justice, 1793, Things as They Are, or The Adventures Concerning Sally Williams, 1794. Only titles are enough, no need to go through the summaries or the works. Next we have the most important novelist of this age, that is Jane Austen, who was born on 1775 and died on 1817. First of all, she has written Sense and Sensibility. You can read the whole novel. It is very important novel. The first title of this novel was based on two significant characters, Elinor and Marianne. Here we have the story of the Dashwood sisters. There are 3 sisters and one brother, John, who owns all the property, and 3 sisters belong to a second mother. Next, she has written Pride and Prejudice, published 1813. Look, this work is also very important and you need to read the book itself. Mrs. Bennet is the important character of the novel with her 5 daughters. In the very opening scene, she is scolding her husband. She says, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." This is the first sentence of this novel and stands as one of the most famous first lines in literature. The first title of this novel was First Impressions. It was finished in 1797 but went begging for 16 years before it found a publisher. Next work we have is Mansfield Park. You need to read the summary of this work, detailed summary I would say. And the fourth one is Emma 1815. You need to read the whole book itself. It is very important. When Jane Austen wrote it, she herself said, "I'm going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like." The opening line introduces the imaginary character Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition. Next, she has written Northanger Abbey, published 1798. Look, you need to read the detailed summary of this work. It was sold for a trivial sum to a publisher who laid it aside and forgot it until the appearance and moderate success of Sense and Sensibility in 1811. Then, after keeping the manuscript for some 15 years, he sold it back to the family, who found another publisher. Next, we have Lady Susan, and then finally we have is Persuasion. Reading any of these works, one is inclined to accept the hearty endorsement of Sir Walter Scott. That young lady has a talent of describing the involvements and feelings and characters of ordinary life, which is to me the most wonderful I ever met with. The big wow strain I can do myself, like any now going, but the exquisite touch which renders ordinary commonplace things and characters interesting from the truth of the description, and the sentiment is denied to me. What a pity such gifted creature died so early. Though Walter Scott liked Jane Austen, Jane Austen didn't like Walter Scott because he started writing novels and Jane Austen didn't want it. Next important writer we have is Mrs. Anne Radcliffe, who was born in 1764 and died in 1823. Contemporary critics called her the mighty enchantress and the Shakespeare of romance author. Radcliffe had a strong influence on Fyodor Dostoevsky as a child. Her novels, with their azure-eyed heroines, haunted castles, trapdoors, bandits, abductions, rescues in the nick of time, and a general medley of overwrought joys and horrors, were immensely popular, not only with the crowd of novel readers, but also with men of unquestioned literary genius like Scott and Byron. She has written Mysteries of Udolpho, 1794, only title is enough. Now, finally, we will discuss some 6 chief characteristics of this age which are very important. That is, prevalence of romantic poetry. Romantic poetry was very prevalent during this age, the Romantic age, and the creation of the historical novel by Scott and this particular lady Maria Edgeworth also, and it is also known for the first appearance of women novelists such as Mrs. Anne Radcliffe, Jane Porter, Maria Edgeworth, and Jane Austen. Mary Shelley also. The development of literary criticism in the work of Lamb, De Quincey, Coleridge, and Hazlitt. It is also known for the practical and economic bent of philosophy as shown in the work of Malthus, James Mill, and Adam Smith. Finally, it is also known for the establishment of great literary magazines like the Edinburgh Review, the Quarterly, Blackwood's, and the Athenaeum. So finally, this particular age of English literature, the Romantic age, comes over here, finally ends here. And I hope you like the video, and if you like, then please do like, share, and comment on the video, and subscribe for more such updates. We'll see you in another video. Thank you for joining us.